Introduce yourself and share a little about your professional background.
Hi, my name is Conn. I'm currently a student at National University. I'm pursuing a master's in education in inspired teaching and learning with a single subject teaching credential in social science. I got my 2 undergraduate degrees from Bellarmine University in history and political science. While I was there, I kind of worked at jobs that were tailored towards my majors. First job was a special exhibit guide for the Louisville Slugger Museum and Factory. My other job was at a nonprofit. It was Kentucky Refugee Ministries. I worked in their law office. For the past 2 years, I've been teaching, substitute teaching. While I've been teaching, I've had multiple experiences. I've been a long-term sub twice. I'm actually about to start up my third. 2 of them were for social science classes, and this one is for a health class. I've also had the privilege and opportunity to be not only an assistant wrestling coach, I'm currently an assistant varsity baseball coach at the school. Hopefully that I'll be student teaching at this time next year.
What is your research topic about?
My research topic is about looking at ELLs and how basically income inequality can affect English language learners. And I'm really looking at how the impacts of socioeconomically factors can impact their education, especially in the public education system.
Why do you want to investigate this topic?
The main reason why I want to investigate this topic is because I've seen firsthand the impacts of income inequality on my students. I've seen the burden, and it is truly a burden. I've seen it not only at schools that I've taught at, but schools that I've personally went to. I've seen it in my own community. And one group that is affected quite a bit are English language learners. And I would love to, by doing this research and implementing this research, I would hope to make a change, make a difference, not only in the community where I'm teaching in, but where I reside as well.
Explain your research question.
So my research question specifically is, what is the impact of introducing a curriculum that builds self-resiliency in ELLs who identify as socioeconomically disadvantaged? The purpose of looking at kind of building this idea of self-resiliency is because a lot of the times they don't have much, and so by trying to build this trend of self-resiliency, hopefully seeing a difference in the classroom environment. And then I'd also like to ask, what are my own students' perception of their ability to succeed in the classroom? And you hear the term positivity breeds positivity. And I truly believe that. So if you implement positivity in the classroom, you will get a positive outcome.
How do you plan to answer your research question?
A couple reasons, or a couple ways. Number one, at the beginning of the semester, I plan to kind of start off with a broad overview of certain resources that are available to my students. And all these resources are free of charge. They are easily accessible. Knowing full aware of that, not all my students have accessibility to certain resources, especially that cost money. So these resources are really made sure that they are cheap, they are easily accessible, especially if you don't have access to a car. A lot of them are, not all of them, but some of them are online, so this could include ways to get to online resources, and really making my students aware of these resources. So first, by introducing these resources in a lesson, kind of like an introductory lesson. Next, I will be assigning them their own part of this lesson, and their own portion of this is to specifically research a resource. So one resource that can help them throughout the course. And throughout the entire course, they'll be keeping a log, they'll be keeping a journal, and this journal is meant to kind of as like a way to reference the resource that they're constantly going over. So any new assignment that they might have, whether it be from my class or another class, they'll have the opportunity to, hey, look, I'm actually using this resource, or hey, I'm keeping on track and being able to follow along with the rest of the course. And I feel like having them develop this on their own, it's truly building this, like I mentioned before, a system of self-resiliency and being able to go out on their own and research things and hopefully see an impact to where they're succeeding in my class.
What were your resources for this assignment?
My resources, I've had a couple. The National University Library has been phenomenal. Has been very helpful for me, especially with some of the research, not only proposals, but just research on this topic in general. I've also had a hands down unbelievable research partner. Her name is Brandy Boone. We've been in contact since I believe the first course of this master's program. She's been very helpful. We've been bouncing ideas off of each other back and forth, and through the positives and negatives of the course, just sticking through it. And but yeah, those are the two main ones. And then my own resource list I've gathered, from teacher pay teachers to a lot of the databases that we use. So EBSCOhost. Also, some work that I've done personally with the Sacramento History Museum recently. So I have a couple of resources that I'm incorporating to the lesson that I've been able to research because of this assignment. So it's been very helpful.
Step by step, what is your methodology for your research?
So I kind of touched upon this a little bit, but like I said, the step-by-step process, the first part is going to be introducing the lesson. It's going to be the introduction of what are these resources, how they can benefit you, also kind of tying into what it means to be socioeconomically disadvantaged, what it means to not have access to these resources. Now, at the same time, I'm not trying to put any students down, and I'm also not trying to state the obvious, because a lot of these students, they don't want to hear, that they're socioeconomically disadvantaged, that they're low-income families. They know that. They live it every single day. So it's not about kind of addressing that again. It's making aware of, like, look, you might not be allotted certain resources, but doesn't mean that you necessarily have to start on the lower end of the spectrum. It doesn't mean you need to start behind in the race. You can still be up to par with everyone else and still have equal opportunities for success. And I feel like this embrace of self-resiliency is something, it's kind of a central theme that I want to establish throughout the rest of my course or throughout the rest of the class and semester. I will be having a few checkups with, like I mentioned, the journals. That will happen basically after each unit, so I personally can see the development of their resources and if they're continuing to be using these resources or if they're not. And I'd hopefully like to see a correlation to where if they are building upon their resources, if they're using their resources, if they're finding new ones, I can see a correlation between their grades, if it's improving or if it's decreasing. So yeah, all really pushing towards this idea of self-resiliency. At the beginning of the school year, I also want to give them a survey. Now, this survey is basically a starter. It's an anonymous survey which assesses their own dependency. It assesses their own self-resilience, and they grade themselves. And at the end of the semester, at the end of the school year, also we'll give them a very similar survey, and hopefully they feel like they've adapted and have kind of had their own self-resiliency built up and they can succeed more in the classroom.
If you could travel back in time, what kind of advice would you give yourself in terms of research strategies?
It's a really good question. I would probably start earlier. I knew that I really wanted to talk about income inequality. And it took a little bit for me to really narrow down. I think it was even the second course. It was 3 courses total. It was the second course where I really narrowed down my my topic. And my professor was phenomenal. She really helped me out a lot. Not only developing my topic, but really like focusing on a specific aspect of socioeconomically disadvantaged individuals and how I can build a support system that can not only benefit them for one class, but for, their entire, academic career or leading forward in life, whether even if it's not pursuing college or pursuing a job or some sort of career. But yeah, if I could change something, it'd maybe be to start a little earlier and to really narrow it down earlier as well. Because I started off with a pretty broad topic of income inequality and its effects, and I think looking at the effects of income inequality is very important, but realistically narrowing it down to where I can implement something that is beneficial for the education system, I think is what I really, really wanted to do. So, yeah.
What are your plans for your future after completing your master's degree?
Teach. So once I'm done with this master's portion, I will be student teaching this coming fall. Hopefully at the school where I'm currently coaching. I would love to teach. A lot of people have asked me if I want to go into the administration portion of academics, and I don't at the moment. And it's not necessarily because I don't want the challenge. I'm always looking forward to a new challenge, but it's more of I love dealing with the students. I love seeing the change that I can have in their lives, and that's really what I'm shooting for. So right now the next step is to teach and to kind of take what I'm learning here from national and to implement it into the classroom, and I'm really looking forward to that. I feel like my undergrad was focused on history, and I loved every bit of it because it's a passion of mine. And my graduate program is really focused, okay, let's hone in those skills that I've learned from my undergrad in terms of history and how I can implement that into the classroom, because I knew from day one, even going into my undergraduate, that I knew I wanted to teach eventually, but this is the route that I took, and I think it'll work out in the end.